I'm Flavia, and I am a registered three principles practitioner working out of London and Wiltshire in the UK. And I'd love to just take 10 minutes to talk about what my life was like before I learned this understanding, what my first insights were, how my life has changed, and what this understanding means for the field of mental health and our understanding of the human spirit. So, what was my life like before? Honestly, I was a real worrier. I was a ruminator. In fact, I worried myself out of my marriage. I was deeply insecure within myself. I didn't believe in myself. I didn't know how to. I didn't know what that meant. I was indecisive, and I was a slave to my emotions because I didn't understand, and indeed I misunderstood where my feelings were coming from and what they meant. So I was the ultimate victim of my circumstances, and I was very reactive, and I was rarely peaceful. Now, my first insight into this was really seeing how thought created my experience of life. And that was life-changing in a moment, because I realized that I couldn't blame anyone else for how I was feeling or behaving. So really seeing thought playing out. And so in a way, my state of mind became visible to me. And then once I saw how it worked in myself, I saw how it was working in everybody else. So that was one piece. And then the second piece was really seeing and understanding that I am innately resilient, by which I mean that I realized I had my own innate wisdom and common sense to guide me through life. And I saw and was taught how that worked. And that really grounded me, and I became calmer, more confident. I started looking to myself for my own answers. So I really started to believe in myself. I finally understood what that really meant. I understood my own self-worth. I mean, it was really a complete shift in my understanding of how life worked and who I am as a human being. And, you know, it really changed my parenting. Oh, my goodness. I mean, I think I was what you might call a helicopter mom before. I hate to admit it. But I'm going to tell you a story, because I think this really demonstrates that children, and indeed anyone, we don't need to know much to get this, but we do need to know. And a few years ago, my younger daughter was 10. And she started having friendship issues at school. And it was deeply upsetting for her, because she just didn't understand why her two best friends suddenly didn't want to see her. And I remember in the evenings, I would try to coach her through it. And one evening, I had an insight. I thought, what am I doing? This isn't going to help her. I'm not going to be in the playground with her. I have no idea what she's going to need to do in the moment, but she will know, because she is innately resilient. And then my next thought was, but she doesn't know that. So I then took 5 minutes to share with her how the mind is intelligent, and how this intelligence of nature works through us as human beings, and why that's something that we can rely on in life, because it's constant. And I remember I took my work whiteboard and I drew 4 images on it. On the left-hand side, I drew a little acorn with an arrow to an oak tree. And on the right, I drew a little smiley face with an arrow to a stick person. And I explained to her that that was her as an adult. And then I just did my best to share with her my understanding of how it works and the deeper potential of the mind. And I remember thinking, I have no idea if any of this is going in, but I could see she was listening. And then it occurred to me to say, because we're Star Wars fans in my family, and I said, darling, I'm talking about the Force, right? And you have it, and this is how it works. And anyway, the next day she went off perfectly happy, and she was fine for about 2 weeks, but then she had another wobble. And I remember we were driving to school, and she was in the back seat, so I could see her in my rearview mirror. And I could see that she was feeling insecure, and she was near tears. And I thought, uh-oh. Anyway, we get to school. She gets out of the car and comes round to my window to say goodbye. And I said, darling, are you okay? Are you going to be okay? And she just looked at me. And she had a moment. She said, I'm going to be fine. I have the force. And she went like that. And off she walked, perfectly happy. And I thought, wow, I was completely humbled. I thought, wow, she has heard something that is going to help her through life. So understanding that resilience piece has been key for me in my life, but I also see it in others. And I'm now with my children able to point it out to them too, so they're learning it. Now, how do I see this understanding changing the field of mental health and our understanding of the human spirit? That is such a beautiful and important question. And here's my take on it for what it's worth. Until now, the field of psychology has really been focused on mental illness. Okay, it's been focused on understanding, diagnosing, managing, treating, and coping with mental illness, with no true understanding of mental health. Now, this is where Sid comes in, because 50 years ago, he had a profound insight into the nature of the mind, the true nature of the mind, and how it works. And he saw that the mind is innately healthy and resilient. Now, we'd never had that understanding of mental health before. It's really interesting because the great mystics and sages of the world, the great philosophers and the major religions, indeed all religions, they've all been pointing to the same thing, which is what Sid is pointing to. But so it's nothing new in the same way that Newton didn't discover gravity. Gravity had always existed, but he realized it in a way that had never been seen before. And he could see the implications of that for the universe. So although what Sid saw is nothing new, the way in which he saw it, the clarity with which he saw it was new. And that is a fascinating moment in human history and is relevant to all of us. But then the second piece that's so important too is that he was able to articulate it in such a simple way that the first psychologists on the scene were able to take the ball and run with it, as it were. They were able to take it into the field of psychology. So what this offers for the field is a true understanding of mental health. And it is a very thrilling discovery, because the more we focus on mental health and understanding it, the more mental health we will have in the world. And because these are universal principles, they just are. So I love this because there's nothing to believe, because they just exist, rather like gravity exists, but they offer psychology her first principles. And we've never had universal principles before. So they now turn psychology from a philosophy into a working science. Because when principles are discovered in any field of knowledge, they describe all that comes out of that field. So these principles describe the logic of the psyche. They explain how the mind works, and they explain all human experience. So they are the unifying principles we've been looking for. And on a global level, you know, it's so interesting because they illuminate how we're all the same. And that is going to change the world, because it already is, one person at a time. But at the moment, we're lost in a world of conflict, fighting over our beliefs, fighting over our differences. But this is going to take us out of that to appreciating how we're all the same. And that, you know, in my mind, it offers us an alternative to conflict, because conflict makes sense at a certain level of understanding. But this takes us to a deeper understanding of the human mind and spirit, that at that level, conflict doesn't make sense anymore. And it offers us a route to unity, to peace, to harmony, and to true mental health. So in my mind, it really offers hope for humanity in that sense. So I think that's it. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.